Hi, I'm Tom, and this is Why Do Men, the podcast exploring male behaviour in dating and relationships. From the evolution of dating apps, online dating, right through to trends like ghosting and catfishing, differing relationship types like E&M and polyamory, it's never been more confusing to find love and healthy relationships. Each episode is going to feature a special guest as we try to figure out why do men. This week's topic focuses on cheating in relationships. We're going to explore how we define cheating, why cheating happens, and look at how we might be able to pick up signs of cheating in a partner. To help me unpick this, I'm joined by presenter, host, self-love and confidence coach, Claira Hermet, who can give a really nice, unique perspective on cheating. Welcome.
Wait, you're making it sound like I'm a terrible cheater.
You told me before that you cheated loads of times. So
yeah,
we're just...
so I'm the perfect person for this. I am a serial cheater. No, I've never cheated on anyone. And I think I've been really clear since I was younger that if I don't want to be with someone anymore, then I end the relationship before I, think about something else with other people. And that's just always how I've thought about things. And it was always obvious to me, like that's just what you do.
Yes.
And then as you get older and you start to kind of experience relationships for yourself, you see your friends in relationships, you're like, oh no, that's not what everyone else does.
It's not. And like obviously cheating is an incredibly sensitive topic and almost means something different to everyone. But like taking your experience out of the picture for a minute, like the people in your close friendship group, like is it something which they've experienced a lot in their own relationships?
I can say that my best friend, and I don't think she'll mind me talking about this because she's been in a relationship now for years and years and been completely faithful. She's in a marriage. But prior to that relationship, every single relationship that she was in, she would cheat on the person she was with. She would have another one lined up before she finished with the first one. Yeah. And she would be cheating with that next one before she finished with the one before. And it was just always like that until she got into the relationship that she's now in and has been in for years. So I think there's kind of that experience. I had an experience with my sibling, my sister, before she passed away, where she was cheated on. So I think that, there is, I've experienced it through other people loads of times. And, I think it's just brutal. And I personally have been cheated on, not as I've got older and not in the last relationship that I was in. Although at the start of that relationship, he was talking to somebody else. Right. But the relationships previous to that, there was a lot of cheating. And my favourite one was, do you remember there was a show and it was like, I can't remember what the guy's called, American show, and it would be like, it was called Cheaters.
Oh my God.
Is a crime.
Yeah, right. This like trashy US like reality type. Yeah. Like, yeah, no, I remember it. Catching a cheater, that sort of vibe.
Yeah, and they'd got like track them down and follow them, all that kind of stuff. And I had an experience like that with this guy that I was in a relationship with. I don't even know if I was 20, maybe I was 21, 22, something like that. And he told me that he was working and his friends were out in the same club as me that night. And he was obviously at work, which it turns out he was at work, but his friends were partying. They'd said hi to me and then they all kind of left. And this girl was like, oh, do you know where like the guys have gone? Because I'm meeting this guy. Wow. So she was meeting the guy that was my boyfriend. And I was like, huh? So then I was like, oh yeah, they've just gone outside. So my friend and I drove to like where he lived, spied in a car and then tried to cut them off in the car. Anyway, cut a long story short, I'm not sure this was a good thing on reflection, but I had lots of his belongings at my house. Right. So I went home, cut them all up, put them in a dustbin bag outside my flat door so I could buzz him into the communal entrance to pick up his chopped up belongings. And then he left. Nothing
better than a jumper with no sleeves, right?
It was much worse than that.
Right. Yeah. Cut the gusset out of his boxer shorts.
Yeah, just everything. Just gone.
That leads me on to, obviously you mentioned that was quite early on in your relationship. Yeah. But like defining cheating is quite difficult, I find, because there's a thing around time, right, and how far into a relationship you are before infidelity becomes a thing. But the other thing I wanted to talk about was like, is cheating purely limited to like physical infidelity, or like the emotional cheating? I just want to throw that around a little bit.
I think it's defined by you as a person, right? Like you define what cheating is for you in your relationship, because I think you know, for me, it wouldn't necessarily be just about someone being physical. It's about, you know, the type of relationship that you're having. If you're having an emotional connection with somebody else, I would define that as cheating, but maybe somebody else wouldn't. I do think that, you know, dating is in a weird space right now where people seem to be seeing each other, you know,
for quite a long time.
Yeah, for ages before they commit to a relationship. And I find that really confusing. And the reason that I find that confusing is if you really like someone, and you know you do, then just commit to a relationship. And if it doesn't work, you can finish it in 6 months or 12 months. It's not a marriage. It's not a huge commitment.
Yeah.
But I guess it's saying is that you're exclusive to each other and you're like just committed to one another and in a monogamous relationship, and you're going to try and see how it goes.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. And this was something that as a guy, I had to get over, and I only really got over quite recently. Was like, I'm my current girlfriend, Gabs, who's like amazing, and we've been together for 4 months. Literally within a couple of weeks, she was like, we're boyfriend and girlfriend, and there was this sort of reticence.
She told you,
she just told me, which I was like, okay, but you know, her point of view, which is exactly what you just mentioned, was that like, well, we're not seeing other people, we're spending loads of time with each other. Like, why do we even need to wait before we put a label on it? Like, I see stuff on social media where like, oh my god, I've just had this like big show of affection from my boyfriend because he's finally called us boyfriend and girlfriend. And from her perspective, she was like, we are together, so why do we need anything more than that? And I think like that idea of seeing someone for quite a long time, say 6 months, like, I think for a lot of people that's just about maybe buying a bit more time, or even when you don't put a label on it, excusing bad behaviour. Yeah, I think so. You know, to me, I guess as well, having the perspective of being a 41-year-old woman is probably definitely different to what I might have done 5 years ago or 10 years ago. Yeah.
And now I'm in a place where I guess maybe a little bit like your girlfriend, where I know what I want. So either we're doing this or we're not doing this.
Right.
The end. Like I don't see the point of kind of, you know, someone who is avoidant, who is non-committal, who is any of those things. And, you know, the sad thing is, and I've seen this happen with my friends as well, where they'll spend a long time, you know, kind of basically being a girlfriend to somebody.
Yeah.
And then that person, like you said, just goes, oh, no, I'm done now.
Right.
And they can, apparently, because they didn't, you know, officially agree to being that person's boyfriend, which I think is utter bollocks. But at the same time, I think as women and as men, if you know what it is that you want and someone is refusing to commit, there's obviously an issue there. Exactly that.
And I think for a lot of guys, there's often a struggle to really understand what you're looking for and what you want. So, and often it's not actually a reflection of the person you're seeing, it's a reflection of your own inability to really understand yourself. So this is what I find. I've still got male friends that are avoidant without really knowing what avoidance is. And my advice to them is like, well, try and dig a bit deeper into that stuff and maybe go and have a bit of therapy, because they don't, let alone understanding what avoidance is, they don't even understand like the building blocks, like the traumatic moments that happened to them, which then led them to that avoidance. But I wanted to talk a little bit about those kind of grey areas that you talked about, and if you have any sort of experience with that. So, because I think if you asked every single guy in a room of 100 guys, like if your other half went through your Instagram DMs or your WhatsApps, would they be 100% comfortable with everything that they read? I think half of those guys would probably say no, because they might be having, I don't know, maybe inappropriate conversations with people. Like, does that count as cheating in your book? Should a bit of secrecy be okay in a relationship?
I mean, I think it's a bit of, you know, I think you have to look at like what you're doing as well, you know, like, and be kind of reflective, because I think what's really hard, and I've kind of discovered this as I've got older, is somebody else is not inside my brain. So I can tell them this is, you know, I'm just dating you or da-da-da-da, but ultimately they don't really know, and they don't know my intention. So they could go through my Instagram DMs and see that I've replied to, you know, guys and be like, yeah, I'm cool. And just kind of had a bit of a back and forth. Not that it's sexual, not that it's like overtly flirtatious or anything, but, you know, that might not make them feel comfortable either. Right. So I think it's, you know, I don't think there's anything wrong with chatting to people. And also, I've noticed from, you know, some friends that have successful relationships.
Yeah, what are their secrets? Tell me.
Well, No, I think that, you know, when they're out, like when my friends are out with me, even if they're in relationships, they might have like a little bit of flirty banter with someone that they meet in a bar.
Yeah.
There is no intent for them to take it any further. They're not going to swap details with them or Instagrams or contact numbers or anything. It's just in that moment fun.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of being a healthy human. And so I think that, you know, for me personally, if I was in a relationship and I feel acceptable, it's acceptable for me to do that, it's acceptable for my partner to do that as well. I think where the lines get crossed is when you're exchanging Instagrams and staying in touch with that person, or you're swapping numbers and staying in touch with that person. But again, I think it has to be defined by you, and it has to be realistic, right? Like, you're not going to not ever speak to someone of the opposite sex again or have any kind of communication with them. And, you know, with social media, we're all so accessible.
Yeah.
That, you know, if someone messages you, I guess it depends what your intention is, but no one can ever know what your intention is. That's the thing.
Well, no, that's the thing. And a lot can be miscommunicated through a lot of those platforms as well, right? Like, but you touched on something really interesting there. And one of my best friends is a guy called Curtis, and he's been with his other half since they were both 17, right? And I mean, I'm turning 40 next year. Like, the success of his relationship is built off those micro moments where they both acknowledge that they both have needs in that relationship which aren't necessarily going to be met by each other. And so when we go out on a boys' like drinking day, for example, like he will openly talk to other women, and you know that does sometimes that's with the knowledge that the woman he's talking to like fancies him, right? But he's like, I think he's like, it's okay for me to talk to that woman and feel maybe a bit of validation myself, because that gives me enough of what I need to then go back to my partner, the wife of, you know, the mother of the kids, and go into that with a healthy mindset. So, and Sam, his other half, doesn't mind that at all. They're quite open about it, and I think that's about kind of establishing boundaries, right? And I think if you just go into it with a absolute hard lock, like no behaviour in any way is acceptable if you're talking to another
person for the rest of your life.
Exactly.
Of the opposite sex.
And that's where the secrecy then comes in. So I find that stuff really interesting.
Yeah, I do think it is about boundaries, but it's about that openness to create them between the two of you that you're both comfortable with. And I'm guessing that he's not like taking his wedding ring off and, you know, if someone asks him...
He just flashes it as he's saying goodbye.
Yeah, like that. It's not that. He's obviously very open about that. And, you know, again, like my friend that I'm thinking of, her and her partner are both, you know, will have a kind of like flirty banter with when they're out and about, and again they're both open about it and honest about it, but it just doesn't go any further. And the fact that it doesn't, so that the boundary's set and they're both sticking to that boundary, means that they have trust in their relationship.
Exactly that. And that example of your friend, can we just labour on that a little bit? So when that behaviour is sort of repeating on it, what factors do you think sort of contribute to that? If it's constantly happening, like, is that and I hope your friend doesn't mind us saying this, like, is that a problem that sits with your friend? Is it a problem that... What behaviour? So if you mentioned that she'd cheated multiple times.
Oh, this is, when she was younger.
Yeah.
I guess, I think she was young and she had a lot of unmet emotional needs, a lot of childhood trauma, etc. And I don't know. I don't really know. I think her dad cheated on her mum and left her mum.
Right.
So I guess maybe there's something around that of like leaving before you get left. And, you know, it was a definite pattern and she acknowledges it and that she repeated it. And also I think it was about not being alone, never wanting to be alone. So if things felt like they were starting to go wrong in the relationship she was in, it probably sent her into like a bit of a panic. And then it's like, oh God, if this was subconscious, I think more so probably than conscious. I need to grab hold of somebody quick before, you know, this whole thing crumbles. I need to jump ship essentially to make sure I'm safe.
That's so interesting. Obviously the purpose of the episode today is to really help our listeners, viewers understand like why men in particular might cheat in relationships. And I think that's a really good point around, it's about conflict and about when the going gets tough, rather than
resolve it.
Exactly. Rather than like bringing your own unmet needs or, you know, your own fears or insecurities to your partner, you just go and search for that validation somewhere else.
Yeah. So I think there was definitely a lot of that. And and then she met the person that she's with now, and then it all changed.
And do you think that's because he makes her feel more safe or listened to?
I think also she was just like, right, I'm committed to this, and there was probably more, I guess, desire from her part to actually resolve things and to stick at things and to not, quit things. And she has.
I mean, I'd like to give my own perspective on this stuff because I've cheated in the past.
I was going to say, we haven't even asked you that question. Dun, dun, dun.
I'm the host, Claira. I'm not allowed to.
You're a cheater.
But I have cheated in the past, and particularly when I was younger, like I had a very, very limited understanding of myself, right? And my own traumas. And for me, that behaviour was about the need for validation. Like I'd always really, really over-index on like the way that I would get validation for my own self would be, do women fancy me? Like, and it was incredibly shallow. And I think this is something which a lot of guys can probably identify with, where it's like, right, the way that I feel good about myself and the way that I inflate my ego is by having sex with other women. Like, and it was really that simple. And so what I found was that when I was in relationships, particularly in the early stages of relationships, I wasn't even sure how to like have my needs met by my partner. So all I wanted really was those very, very shallow sort of materialistic things. And it took me ages to really understand that behaviour and how damaging it was.
Did you feel guilty though? Because you said like, obviously it was meeting your needs for validation, but I envision that if you'd done that and then going back into that relationship, and I think that's probably why as well, like with cheating, I wouldn't be able to, because I can't lie either. I'm not a good liar. So that would be it.
Yeah.
I'd just crumble.
So, and yeah, if I'm completely honest with you, like I had care towards those people, but and this is a journey which I've been on. Like in those days, I had such little self-worth that I was like, I don't even really want to. I can't even acknowledge the idea of like someone leaning on me or do you know what I mean? So it was interesting because the journey for me was like start thinking better of myself in a more holistic way, and then you start treating other people better, right?
Yeah, because I guess when it comes to validation, if you can meet your own needs, like if you already know you're good enough, and if you already know you're worthy,
exactly,
and if you already know you're lovable, then you don't need external validation. You don't need someone to prove it to you. And so I suppose you stop looking for those kind of hollow experiences because you start to be able to kind of internally fill up your cup rather than filling up someone else.
So, filling up someone else's cup. But interestingly for me, like the journey that I went on was, stage one was like not treating people very well. Stage two was then, it was just having fleeting short-term relationships because I got over that kind of hurdle of like, actually it's perfectly fine to say to someone that you don't feel like it's right long-term. And actually, every single experience I've had with people that I've been dating where I've pulled the plug on it has been a positive experience, and where they've, kind of been, maybe thankful that I've been able to be upfront with them rather than
drag them along.
Exactly. That's the thing. But even with that, like there was still an issue whereby I would pull the plug too early because it was again my own self-worth. And this is the thing that I want people listening to realize, is that for guys in particular, like the problem a lot of the time when they break up with people isn't with the partner, it's with themselves. And so I think cheating is one way of how that might manifest, but there are other ways as well. And often that's through broader avoidance things,
Yeah.
So,
and also I guess like something that we touched on earlier is like you get into a relationship, and if you don't have the skills to be able to, communicate, to resolve conflict, if you don't know what your needs are that need to be met, if you have that resentment builds easily, I think, especially if you're in a relationship with someone who does know what their needs are and they're asking you to meet those needs and you're just like,
exactly,
which I've definitely experienced before. It just then ends up, like from being a partner of someone like that, you end up really resenting that person because it's like, I'm asking you to do really simple things that will make such a big difference to me and make me really happy. You're saying you love me.
Yes.
I don't understand why you would not do those simple things that would make me happy when you say you love me. And so I think, resentment builds, and then the relationship can just not feel very nice anymore.
Yeah.
And then it feels stagnant because it doesn't move. And then I think, very often people then go and look for excitement elsewhere or look to have their needs met elsewhere, rather than either holding their hands up and saying, do you know what, this isn't working, let's finish it, or what we're doing isn't working. We need some support. We need some help. We need to learn how to communicate properly.
Yeah.
And I think there's probably a lot of that going on because we're not, unless you're really lucky to be born into a family that has, that modelled for you, where your parents do communicate and they do that resolve conflict, and you grow up learning how to do that, then it's alien to us, and yet it's kind of a cornerstone and fundamental to a healthy, happy relationship.
Do you mind if I ask about like your own parents? Like what was the dynamic there?
So my mum and dad were amazing together, but my mum died when I was 9.
I'm sorry to hear that.
That's okay. So then everything changed.
Yeah.
And I always say it was like everything looked the same, but nothing was the same. Kind of a little bit like, I guess, Stranger Things, the upside down, everything's burning. It wasn't quite that bad, but it was like, nothing was the same. My friendships could never be the same. Nothing could ever be the same again because I wasn't the same.
Sure.
And my dad quite quickly got into another relationship with someone who just wasn't particularly emotionally healthy. He was not particularly emotionally healthy, and chaos reigned supreme.
Right.
And so, I did not learn how to communicate because even my grief at that time, there was no space for it. It was we just get on with it. That's it, done. So it has taken me years to get to a place where I can communicate how I feel. And even now, sometimes, I struggle.
And when you mentioned about like meeting your needs when you're in a relationship, like, can you just give me some examples of like what that might look like to you? Like, what would you be looking for in a partner in terms of their ability to meet those needs?
So I think when it comes to like my needs, especially, it's being like heard and listened to. So maybe things that I didn't have when I was growing up. It's that kind of idea that you're not just sitting there passively hearing me talk, that you're actually invested in kind of listening to, what's going on with me, and someone who's actually interested in me as a person, and I know that sounds silly, but very often people don't have like good listening skills. And also, if someone else doesn't have an emotional understanding of themselves, then when you start talking about stuff like that, it's going to be alien to them. It might be boring to them, insignificant to them.
Scary to them.
Scary to them, yeah, sure. And I think also like someone who's supportive of me is really important as well. Again, I don't really feel like I necessarily had that growing up. And so, I know that when I am in a relationship, that's kind of something that I'm looking for. And someone who listens to what it is that I'm trying to create with a relationship and ask themselves whether or not they're trying to create the same thing.
Sure.
And if they are, then cool. And if they're not, then they're not. You know? I think, but some people haven't done that. Like some people don't know what that looks like yet for them. And so it's really difficult. For me, it would be really difficult to pursue anything with someone who hasn't kind of thought about, what their future looks like or the quality of the relationship that they want to have.
Have you found that as you've gotten older that the people that you're dating have got more of that sort of inward look and self-reflection, or has it become harder?
So I think like the people that I date are few and far between now. And I think that's just because so one of my friends said to me, this year you need to do try multiple dating, like where you're dating different people.
Right.
I'm like, hun. And obviously like the pool of people is going to get smaller because people get married and people are in relationships and etc.
Yeah.
And I think also, the person that I would have dated in my 20s, I would never date now. The person I would have dated even in my 30s, I would never date now. And that's, it's no shade, but it's just, my life is good. I'm good. Mm-hmm. And I understand that when someone comes into your life, even if they're the right person for you, they will trigger things for you. Great. That gives me more opportunity to work on myself.
Yeah.
However, there are certain things that just don't make sense to me anymore. Like if it's not nice and enjoyable, I don't want to do it. If someone's not messaging me for a couple of days and I have no interest in any of that anymore. It doesn't interest me. It doesn't excite me. It doesn't work for me. So, to find someone who's, I guess, quote unquote, like ready for a relationship, and knows what that means, that doesn't happen that often. I would say that the more that I have kind of worked on myself, and I mean as in meeting my own needs, meeting myself at a deeper level, understanding my trauma on a deeper level, like working through all of those things. The more that I have done that, the people that I'm meeting are different, in a good, positive way.
Yeah,
and although I haven't met the person yet, I keep doing this all the time. I don't know where that's coming from. Probably because the mic's so close and I can't do any other hand. But although I haven't met that person yet, like the last couple of guys that I dated have been, you know, great in their own ways. There was some downfalls, but I've just gone, although it was upsetting at the time, what can I learn about myself from this? You know, that's it. Yeah. That's all I can do.
Thank you for sharing that. Like it's very similar to a lot of my own journey where, I don't know, sometimes I've found that like your growth and your evolution as a human being, like sometimes I find it hard to keep up with myself, if that makes sense. And what I mean by that is like, I thought I knew everything that I wanted in a partner, right? And then about a year ago, I was like, well, I'm just going to take a step back from dating for a bit. And in that 6 months of no dating, I was like, I've actually just got it completely wrong. And it took me a long time to actually reappraise, your non-negotiables and then your negotiables. And the person that I'm dating now is probably someone that I would have written off originally. And I'm not saying this is about compromise. Sometimes it can be, but it's actually about understanding yourself a bit better and understanding more. I don't think that someone that shares exactly the same goals and ambitions and is like really driven and all that kind of stuff is what I'm looking for at all. I just needed to get a better understanding of who I was and therefore what I was looking for in a relationship.
Well, they do say that, don't they? They say if you write down like what you're looking for in a partner, become that.
Right, exactly, exactly. And I used to think sometimes it's like about filling in the gaps in my own flaws, you know, and finding someone that can plug those. But I don't even know if that's right anymore. It's bloody hard to find someone, a lifelong partner, you know?
Yeah, I think so. And I think
difficult.
It's probably much easier when you're in your 20s because you're like, way, yeah, that one will do.
Everyone's great.
They're attractive, they're good fun,
exactly.
you know. And then, again, I see it with some of my friendship group where, yeah, that was great then, but now it doesn't work because you don't have those tools. And if you're with a partner where you can both grow together, that's great, but you're never going to both grow at the same time.
Exactly.
So there is all of that kind of moving and shifting. And then I think, you know, there are a lot of people who are in relationships where they're like, shit.
Yeah, right. And then you've built too much almost to get out of it. But bringing it back to the
cheating
topic of cheating, we talked a little bit before we started shooting about the biological differences between men and women. And I know you got some notes there because I think that there is a hypothesis that male testosterone fueled, you know, this sort of virility that a lot of men say they have, it almost gives them a rationale or an excuse to cheat. And what's your take on that?
Well, I think, you know, men's sexuality and women's sexuality is viewed very, very differently. Men being promiscuous is perfectly acceptable. Yeah. Women being, or it's not even what is promiscuous anyway, but women enjoying sex is not okay. Men enjoying sex is okay, you know. Or again, women enjoying sex if it's with 1 or 2 or 3 part. I don't know what the body count number that's allowed is, so I can't quite get the number, is acceptable. But for men, it's completely different. And, you know, again, I think it's just a way of oppressing women. Like, it's just a way of excusing shit behaviour and saying, oh, it's okay for us because we're men and we're wired that way, or we're biologically driven to be this way.
To spread our seed and that whole narrative.
So I kind of looked this up because I was like, is there actually any scientific study that proves this?
Yeah.
And this says the idea that men are wired to cheat, it does it in inverted commas as well, is overly simplistic and not fully supported by evidence. It goes on to say that individual choices, social context and personal values play a significant role in infidelity, and not all men will act on potential biological influences to cheat. And the reason that it says about the biological influences is simply because men have higher testosterone levels. That's it.
I mean, I'm sure, right, if you looked at it in a very crude way, like the opportunities for women to cheat are probably far higher than the opportunities for men because of the way that men interact with women, particularly in like...
Well, their testosterone levels are all over the place.
Exactly, right? So, you know, I'm
Give
sure
them an opportunity.
You must have had plenty of experiences where you've been out with your mates and guys have sort of presented themselves to you, and I'm not sure it works the same way the other way round, but for me that just feels like an excuse or a rationale as opposed to, it's about accountability, right, isn't it? And empathy. And I mean, I've spoken a lot already today about like how those things like compassion, empathy, kindness, like they're traditionally for some reason viewed as very, very feminine qualities. And I don't know why that is, you know, because I think the world needs to evolve and be a lot more fluid about masculine and feminine qualities.
Yeah, but I also think, you know, I think there is nothing stronger or more courageous than vulnerability.
Yeah.
You know, that's not a weakness. The weakness is I'm so tough, I don't have emotions. Like that's the weakness, because you're so scared of your emotions that you need to avoid them completely, right?
Yeah.
So I think, you know, I love my dad, and my dad's an amazing man, and he, you know, I'd say that he's a very like masculine person, but he's also kind and silly and playful, and just, he doesn't subscribe. I mean, my dad is one of a kind, but he doesn't subscribe to any, if I show him like some of the comments that I get or people talking about body count, he's got no, like he just, he doesn't care. So, you know, he's, the way that he sees humans and values humans or women is not in the same way that, you know, that kind of manosphere does. And he never, I have a brother, there was never any difference in the way we were spoken to, treated, you know. So, I mean, yeah, I think that kind of, I was really shocked when I realised that that there was that kind of perception that women shouldn't do this and women shouldn't do that, and it's bad for women, but it's okay for men, because I was like, oh, that's weird. So, yeah, I think that he's quite a good example. I mean, don't get me wrong, he has flaws in other ways, as all humans do.
Yeah.
But, you know, there's some great aspects to him that I think that I would definitely like want in a partner as well.
We've talked a lot about the sort of different factors or the different elements as to why men might cheat. And the other thing that I just wanted to sort of touch on before we get into some of the audience questions was like, I have a view that there's a big factor is about your environment. And what I mean by that is, I've been on stag do's before, right, with men that on the face of it have got these incredibly healthy relationships. They have children, they live in beautiful houses in lovely parts of Surrey. And then the minute they go away with the boys, they then feel like it's normalised to cheat on their wives. And so I don't know if you had a perspective on that, but based off the guys maybe that are in your life, because I find that so unusual. Like I don't know how you could go from 1 minute sort of being in a very, very authentic, natural relationship to then being in an environment with a different group of friends and feeling like it's okay.
I don't know if what is that, detachment? I don't really know about that. And I don't think, like, I haven't experienced that, I guess, firsthand. I'm just trying to think that I know of, but you know, like from what you're talking about, it could be anyone essentially who's going and doing that. And I just think it's just so disrespectful, isn't it? Like, I've
got to say as well, I think in certain relationships, like it's almost like one of those known secrets in the couples, and I think that's really sad as well, because like ultimately, again, we talked about it, that's about their wives not wanting to lose everything that they've created, so they almost like excuse the infidelity.
But again, if it's a choice to stay, you know, and I mean, sometimes a choice is a tricky word, because, you know, again, it depends how tied up things are financially. Like, what does that actually look like? How viable is it? How easy is it? You know,
exactly.
And also, who knows the ins and outs of other people's relationships? You can think someone's got the most amazing relationship and it's toxic and horrible, and you don't know, you know, if someone feels safe to leave or if they feel okay to leave. For some women, that might be okay though. Some women might genuinely say, do you know what? I'm happy with the life that I've got, and I can, you know, maybe departmentalize, and he goes and does what he wants. Some people have open relationships. But, you know, that, I think it's like for guys to kind of like tolerate that of their friends and kind of just be like, oh, that's fine, it's normalized, is, you know, something that maybe needs to change as well. Like, hold them to account.
I agree. I hear this a lot.
Would you say anything though? Because it's like that situation, if you went away with your friends and one of your friends cheated on their wife, what do you do? Like, you all hold down the secret, you know, it's that kind of.
And do you know what the response would be? It would normally be, you're not in a relationship, how would you, you're not married, how would you know? You don't have kids. Like it's got nothing to do with you. You don't know how difficult it is.
But it is difficult. But then that doesn't mean you go and shove your dick in someone else. Because also as well, like, what does that actually do for you? Like, that would be my kind of question for someone to investigate. Like, what does a meaningless sexual encounter, other than, not to say anything bad of your friends, but the 2, 5, 10 minutes of pleasure that they get from that, what is it that they're not getting? And I think, there's been a lot of talk recently because the whole, like, Bonnie Blue has, with her 100 Men and kind of has gone around saying, I'm here for the dads and the husbands or whatever, because if, men cheat, then it's the woman's fault or whatever. So, I'm not quoting her exactly, but essentially, I think, again, it's a really tricky one, because if you're in a relationship with somebody and as a woman and your needs are not being met, and maybe you're saying to that person, I'm looking after the kids all day, I'm exhausted, I really need some help with the laundry, I really need some help with cleaning, I really need some help with, maybe you could pick your children up, maybe you could look after your children for the day and I could have some time to myself. But those men are still stuck in the very kind of traditional mindset that actually I'm a man, so I don't do any of that stuff. I think in some relationships, resentment builds. And it's the biggest turn off. Like, it makes someone so unattractive and so unsexy. Yeah. If I'm saying to you, please help me. I need your help. Yeah. This will make my life so much easier. This will make me so much happier. We're in a relationship together. It's only small things. Please don't make me keep asking you. Yeah. And they just refuse to do all of that. Then there's so much kind of resentment there. Why do I want to have sex with you? You don't care about me. You're not meeting my needs. Why would I want to meet yours? It doesn't make you feel sexy or looked after or cared for. And so, I think that there's a lot of relationships that are sexless. Yeah.
Do you know what? It's a really interesting point. And what it made me think about was, like, this whole idea of, like, this savior complex that guys have, like this problem solving mentality whereby men, particularly men that are sort of stuck in that very traditional mindset, might be like, right, it's my job to, like, protect and provide and have all these, like, sort of grand, like, feelings, but actually, like, meeting your needs doesn't mean about, like, it doesn't mean, like, rescuing you from, like, being beaten up by a group of 4 guys. Like, it's those little things, and those little things kind of feel meaningless to a lot of guys, because they're like, that doesn't tie into, like, my view of what masculinity is. It's not me being big and strong, it's me doing the washing. But that's something which needs to change, I think, because different people have very different needs. And for me, what I've realised in the relationships I've been in is that those little, like, thoughtful things, which are actually the things which maintain your relationship. So.
Yeah. I mean, look, don't get me wrong, grand gestures are great and it's beautiful and it's wonderful, especially maybe at the start of the relationship, etc. I'm not saying that, they're not nice either way, because I'm someone who likes to do nice things for people as well. So totally get that. Yeah. But I also think, like, when you're talking about an actual relationship and the day-to-day running of a relationship, in the relationships that I see that are happy and healthy, my friend gave me an example. This is another friend, not one that I've spoken about before. She gave me an example where her husband, his way of doing things was like, he has a very successful business, but he would buy her gifts. Yeah. She's like, I just want you to take the bins out. Right. Like, I appreciate the gift. Yeah, cool. Yeah. Please take the bin out. And that was for her, like, the act. I know people say the love languages are not kind of, they're not a psychological theory that's been proven. But again, it's like you can still use them, I think we all like all of them.
Yeah,
but,
I agree.
Come on. That. And the same people that I'm talking about, they've just had a baby, and my friend's partner, he's amazing. He is hands-on. He's taken, because it's his own business, he's taken quite a lot of time off for paternity leave. Yeah. He's fully invested, fully involved. And I love to see it, because I'm like, that's, again, like, if I was ever to have a child, but that's what I want, like, someone who is not avoidant and not scared of taking care of their own children. Yeah. I just, I dated someone recently who's the main caregiver to his own children. Amazing. And he's not doing anything unusual or anything, special. He's looking after his own children. Yeah. And he's doing a great job of it, So I think that there are great guys out there. And yeah, I think that there is nothing wrong with actually deciding that you want something more from life than that kind of surface level connection and sexual connection. And to be able to do that, relationships aren't easy. You have to go a bit deeper. I don't know. I think the models changed as well, because I guess for our parents, it was a different time.
Yeah. You know? I mean, honestly, I do think it's very, very difficult. Now, I mean, we're both, right, I turn 40 next month, and like the conditions, the economic conditions that we have now compared to what our parents had, like the idea of that, like one parent goes out and work, the other parent stays at home and looks after the kid, was a lot easier in those days.
No.
I've had a lot of stick at times for my views on sort of dual parents both working, because people were like, well, yeah, you know, that doesn't sort of reflect traditional gender roles and relationships. And I'm like, well, sometimes it's out of necessity. Like, and if I want to give my children, I would love to have children. If I want to give them the life that they deserve, then it might need both parents to work. And then you really have to work hard, because to your point around those other traditional roles that might be seen as the women's role in the house, like you have to split that stuff too. So it's difficult to navigate through that stuff. It
is. And we do live in a different time. But I also think we live in a time where, you know, people are requiring, I guess, like we require more, we need more, because we are more in touch with ourselves, our emotions, like all of that stuff. And there's nothing, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It can make things great and wonderful and amazing, but both people have to be on the same page.
I wanted to get to some of the audience questions that we've had, so we're going to throw these around. I'm throwing these over to you as the expert, okay, but I will chip in on them. So there was one message that really resonated with me, and it was by somebody that had been cheated on quite recently. And her question was, how do you start even, or how do you even begin to think about rebuilding your life when something like that happens to you?
Do they stay with that person?
They didn't stay. They broke up with them.
Good.
Amen.
No shade to anyone who decides to stay with that person, work on that relationship. For me personally, and you know what? I always say this. At this stage, it's easy for me to say I would just walk away from it.
Yeah.
But, you know, if I had been in a relationship with someone, if I had children with them, if, you know, I was deeply in love with them, depending on the circumstances, I might do something completely different. And that's why I think I never say this is the rule of how I live my life, because I know those rules change.
Yeah.
But I think, like, first of all, I'm really sorry that happened, because I know that it's really painful when someone kind of does that to you. But I think the first thing to understand is it's you know, it's not really about you. Like we've said a lot in this, it's about them, and they're not your person. And I think I speak to women quite a lot, and it's like, oh, I was dating this guy and then he did this and he did that, and I'm really upset about it. And I understand where the upset comes from, but also he's not your person.
Yeah.
Like because your person, if you can tell me how you want to be treated and what your relationship would look like, but then this isn't your person, because they're not capable of giving you what you want and what you need. And
in a way, I guess there's something, if you can try and think about it, there's something quite freeing about that in a weird way, because it gives you an opportunity to find your person. Yeah, it gives you're no longer wasting time with someone who's not your person. It gives you the opportunity to find your person, but it also is probably, I imagine, quite triggering. Like when someone does that to you, you're going to question yourself. You're going to question, you know, what did I do wrong? Was I not good enough? What was it about me? You know, and that is brutal, but I think it's a real opportunity to become more self-aware and to watch your internal dialogue and what it's doing, and just get a hold of it as and when you can. Don't get me wrong, go through the grief stage, go through the crying stage, go through the smashing stuff phase in a rage room, not their car. Get that out of your system. You're speaking from personal experience there. No. Yeah, get it all out your system. There's nothing wrong with any of that. I think don't repress emotion, express emotion, journal, get it out, scream, shout, do whatever you need to, talk to as many people. But there comes a point where it's like, this isn't about me. And I get to now reestablish who I am, what I've learned from this experience. Because even when things happen to us that are horrible, hard, difficult, there's always like some kind of learning that can come from it. And maybe it's like what I will never, ever accept or tolerate again. And, you know, that is a great thing, right? That you have some kind of learning that comes out of it. And then I think it's about like, what brings you joy? What brings you happiness? And how can you cultivate and bring more of that into your life? And you might need to go to therapy, because one thing I think is really important to say is when someone cheats on you, you do not want to be carrying that into the new experience with a new person. That fear, that anxiety. Exactly. So it's definitely worth working through it properly
resolving it as much as you can. And when you do meet someone else, it probably will be triggered and it probably will come up. But you want to be with someone where you can say to them, hey, not you're making me feel like that, but I'm feeling this way. I'm feeling a little bit insecure about things. I need a bit of reassurance. And I don't think there's anything wrong with asking someone, for a little bit of reassurance. And also, sometimes when that stuff gets triggered for us in new relationships, it's not for the new relationship. It's for us to work on our own separately. So, be prepared for all of that. It's not the end. Your person does exist. They are out there. But this is your time to kind of concentrate and work on and look after yourself and nurture yourself.
I think what a lot of people struggle with when any relationship breaks down full stop, let alone when it comes to the cheating, is the idea of I think people sometimes talk about dependence in quite a negative context. But I mean, I know myself, when you go from being on your own and you're feeling like you have your shit together, you're proud of what you've achieved, and then you suddenly have another person in your life and they become part of your every being, right? And even that sort of physical closeness and that intimacy, to have that suddenly stripped away from you is a really, really hard thing to deal with. And
especially in that way as well, where it's like there was someone else involved.
Exactly.
That's really heartbreaking.
And you're going to have so much resentment towards that person. So there's no way that you're ever going to have a breakup, which is I don't know. Have you ever had a positive breakup where, things end pretty well and you can at least communicate how you're feeling to each other during the breakup?
Yeah,
you're not going to be able to have that
once. But yeah, if someone's cheated on you, that's probably not going to happen unless you were already completely over. Do you know what I mean? If you were completely already over them and then they cheated and you're like, thank God. Now they've done it and not me, which again is a problem of itself, I guess.
But I can imagine that scenario probably happens more than people think, because cheating can sometimes be symptomatic of unhappiness between both partners, right?
Of course. So,
my final question is, could you ever forgive cheating?
Like I said, as I sit here now, in this version of myself, in this version of my life, no. Yeah. I don't think I could. However, if you see me in 10 years' time and the love of my life cheated on me and I'm deciding to forgive them, then obviously, I change my mind. Yeah. And I think that does happen. I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with that. And it depends on the personal circumstances. It depends on you. I think the only thing for me is I don't know how I would ever get that trust back. And I don't want to be somebody who lives in that place of insecurity, and just kind of feeling like, should I check their phone? Should I not check their phone? I wonder what they're doing. Who are they talking to? Sure. I can't, I wouldn't be able to live my life like that. And I don't know how I would ever completely shut off that kind of nagging. So yeah, I think for me right now, no. Yeah. Could you?
You're right. And that it depends on the factors involved. I think it would be far easier for me to forgive, say my girlfriend went on a hen do to Barcelona and had a snog with a sexy Spanish man in a nightclub. I'd find that far easier to forgive than telling me that,
if someone had a snog, I don't think I'd be that bothered about that.
No, I don't think I would either.
I'd be able to get over that.
But when it's an emotional thing, when it's like her guy best mate, then there's just no way you could ever get over that for me personally. So, but yeah. Difficult.
Cheating is a crime. It happens every day. I can't remember what that TV show was, but it was great. I feel like you should have that theme tune in this podcast.
I'm going to watch it as the minute that I get home.
Okay.
So thank you for that. That's all we've got time for today.
Thanks.
Cheers.